Kaufman is Alive. I look at comic books new and old. Today I'm looking at Marvel's book 1 of 4. This is by Marvel Comics. Came out in April of 1994. The artwork is by Alex Ross and it's written by Kurt Busiek. This was the first published comic book by Alex Ross, I believe, that I'm ever been aware of. And I've listened to some interviews with him talk about it too. So I was kind of surprised to find out that he had never done any comic book work before this, because this just came out of nowhere in 1994 and just completely kind of rocked the comic book industry, I feel like. Something like this has very rarely ever been, done or attempted to be done or duplicated in such like a grand manner like this, in such like a prestige type of format. Marvel, didn't seem like they were doing things like this at the time, and they don't really do things like this now. There was a lot more variant and special gimmick covers back in the 90s, which you could definitely call this something like that. But if you're not familiar with Alex Ross, he also did, after Marvels, he went over to DC and did the Kingdom Come miniseries. And all of his work is painted. He does start with pencils, and he uses models for his figures as well, like actual human models and photographic imagery, things like that. So he's got a totally different style, obviously, than a normal comic book artist. He uses painting as his storytelling medium here. So, and, it's a very different style than all other comic books before or since. At the time, I feel like it was perhaps a new paradigm shift in comic books and things were going to start moving in this direction, but they never really did. Alex Ross is one of the few guys to kind of attempt something like this. And this is a long comic book too. I think this is probably about a 40-page book. It was $5.95 when it came out originally. And like I said, it's a 4-part miniseries. And it's basically retelling all of the origins of the original Marvel superheroes, except it's telling it from the eyes of the humans who witnessed it. Specifically, this one human named Phil Sheldon, who's a photographer and reporter for the Daily Bugle. We actually start the story off here. He's talking to this character who's pretty clearly J. Jonah Jameson, talking about how one day he's going to take over the Bugle. He hasn't grown in his Hitler mustache yet, it doesn't look like, but he's got the hair, he's smoking the cigar. They are talking about Hitler, and this does take place back in the late 30s, early 40s. This is right before World War II. And we actually see the original Human Torch, the android Human Torch, being displayed here by Dr. Horton, who's showing his newest invention here. And all the people, including Phil Sheldon, think this is just like a mannequin being set on fire, just some trick. But then he sees it stare straight at him, and he starts to move, the android does. And all the people are looking shocked here. And I got to think like Alex Ross was using some photograph of all these people, or maybe just some models to create this shot. As a kid, I was kind of disappointed when I first picked up this book. I mean, this is one of my favorite comic books from my childhood, but, reading through it, there weren't really a lot of big splash pages of superheroes fighting. You kind of got to like hunt for them throughout this book, because there's lots of just pages of the characters talking, just the humans as they're reacting to, all these marvels, as Phil Sheldon calls them, appearing here in New York City. So you know, the artist and writer, they really make you have to like work for it, and they really build to those giant splash pages throughout this book, and they make it really worth it when you get to them in the context of the story. So we see the Human Torch android on the loose here, and now Phil Sheldon saying he's seen it twice, even though some of the other people don't even really believe what they're seeing, and they just kind of go back to their day-to-day things that they're doing. And we see this woman who's the girlfriend of Phil, Doris, and she sees this Namor, Submariner, start attacking police officers and go back into the water and act like he was nothing to these people as they shot at him and everything. So she's relaying all of this to Phil. And he's saying, "It's okay, sweetheart, it's okay." And he keeps wondering how long this is going to go on, if it was nothing, or if we're going to start seeing more Fantastic Marvels like this show up. And he's saying that Manhattan seemed like the whole world sometimes, but it really was just an island. And he's saying the Marvels didn't really exactly hide. We see the Human Torch, he's starting to fly around. He's kind of causing a little bit of chaos everywhere he goes. We see them, some characters here in the diner talking about the Human Torch. And this is actually a reference to the famous Nighthawks painting by Edward Hopper from 1942. So if you remember that painting of the people sitting in the diner at night, totally a reference to that. But the Human Torch is actually sitting here at the diner, and he overhears these guys talking about him, and he's kind of offended, so he just flies off, burning a hole right through the window there. So we got Phil Sheldon here, and he's always talked about how he's wanted to go to Europe and cover the wars in Europe. But now that all these Marvels are showing up here in New York City, he's given his chance to go to Europe, but he declines it because he wants to stay here and cover this story. He feels like this is where he needs to be. And he's proposed to his girlfriend Doris here, but we start to see as these Marvels show up more and more, he has second thoughts. And he comes to the conclusion that he feels like he can't be a husband unless he can protect his family. And with all these Marvels showing up, he feels like at this point he can't protect his family. So eventually here in the story, he calls off his engagement to Doris. And then we see the confrontation here between Namor and the Human Torch, fire versus water, kind of the classic Marvel battle, the original Marvel battle here. And we see that the Torch starts to become kind of a hero in the eyes of the public as he's kind of protecting everybody from the Submariner. We see this cool panel of them. They go to the Statue of Liberty, and Namor actually tosses him off the top, and his flame's gone out, but his flame comes on right before he hits the water, but he hits the water. And Phil Sheldon explains that they don't actually see what happened after that. They miss the Torch escaping. So again, the story is told through the eyes of the public, so you don't get all of the battles here, which, like I was saying, as a kid, kind of disappointed me. But reading it as a storytelling, in that context, the storytelling really works, I feel like. So then we see Namor showing up through the TV, basically warning the Human Torch to stop following him, or everyone will suffer the consequences. So they all rush to the TV studio where Namor had taken hostage, but everybody's gone. The Torch has already been there and left and burned a hole through the roof there. We get a glimpse of the battle here between them still as they just continue to fight through all these pages, and we just get the reactions of all the public. Eventually there's a woman here, and she's able to convince the Torch and Namor to call a truce. And it's actually the policewoman we saw earlier in this story. She was trying to explain to some of these guys that Namor is just got his own side of the story here that he's trying to explain, but they just mocked her here. This guy says, much as we'd love to listen to you make excuses for a rampaging maniac, we've got work to do, ma'am. So, but she does get them to call a truce here. I almost thought we'd get like the Pink Floyd cover kind of recreated there. This guy says, if they shake hands, I'm definitely going to throw up. But we don't see that. This guy's, he's like, oh, nuts. The torch just let him go after all he did. That ain't fair. And Phil Sheldon is saying, you expect a storm to pay for the damage it caused? A war to care who gets killed? This guy doesn't understand what Phil's talking about. But in the narration, Phil was talking about how the Marvels are like a storm, and there's just nothing that the people can really do about it. They just come and go and cause destruction. And the people just have to ride it out. So then we get more Marvels showing up as Phil, calls off his engagement, and he's expecting the Marvels to eventually go away. And he tells his girlfriend that, they can resume their engagement once all of this has passed. But he realizes it's really not ever going to end. And we see this Captain America showing up here during World War II, as now we're into World War II. I really love the way that they do this newspaper articles, especially on this page here. We actually have like real written articles. It's not just like gibberish. And I like how there's this artist conception of what Captain America looks like. So we get like an actual comic book drawn version of Captain America here in this newspaper clipping, along with like some painted pictures by Alex Ross down here of Captain America doing his thing. Just looks really, really cool. It's just really some really well done stuff here. And we get some narration here about all the things that Captain America is doing, all the incredible things. People can't even really believe it. And it's all done in black and white because we're not really seeing it. It's basically like the old propaganda films on the newsreel here, and we get some more of that. These have to be like actual like photographs Alex Ross is kind of copying here. They sure look like it. We see the public just fawning over Captain America. I love this bottom panel here of like the heads all in the theater watching this newsreel. Really cool, really cool. So the public is just in shock by what they're seeing on this newsreel, as now we see Namor and the Human Torch teaming up to take on all the Nazis here. So we see kind of Namor going back and forth between good guy and bad guy as the public is trying to figure out how, what to make of all these Marvels. So Phil realizes this is really never going to end, so he asks Doris if they can put their engagement back on, and she agrees. And then he says that fall was the best fall of his life. The only Marvels he could think about were Doris's eyes. And then they're at a dance here, and they get word that the Submariner has apparently launched a military attack on all of civilization. And Phil and everybody else is just, shocked and confused about this, as they thought the Submariner was now on their side, but he's turned against them. And they're hoping that it just won't come to America, that it will just stay in Europe and Africa. But then he starts getting closer. He goes to Berlin, then he's in Canada, and suddenly he's here in New York City. And the emergency sirens go off. Everyone has to go to the bunkers to hide here. But Phil Sheldon feels like this is his call to duty, so he goes to the very top floor of this building, and he sees the waves start to crash in here on the bridge. This is a great shot here of him just looking at the wave coming right over the top of the bridge here. And then this is what I'm talking about, how they build to the splash pages. Then you turn the page and we get this great double splash page. of the waves crashing over New York City. We get a photo-accurate New York City here, at least from 1942. There's no trade towers or anything. And this is pre-9/11 for all you kids out there, 1994. So this was about, what, 7 years before 9/11 this book came out. So, but it has that natural disaster feel to it, like something that you can't control happening in New York City. I love the Human Torch up here in the sky. Just an awesome shot. Then we finally get actual, like, a couple pages of real superhero battle here, which is really awesome. Namor and the Submariner. Phil Sheldon, he says he's right where he belonged. Seeing this battle, he says, I was the witness. He's taken all the photographs of it so that there's actual accounts of it. And this is where he loses his eye. He gets hit with some brick off the Human Torch getting thrown through the wall here. This chunk of masonry hits him right in the eye. He says, marking him for all of time. So he finds himself in the hospital, and Doris goes to visit him. He asks her to marry him, even though he says he's Popeye the cameraman now. And we got J. Jonah Jameson here saying, well, I'd say he's recovered. So they get married here. And Phil decides that he's going to go to Europe and cover the war, World War II, and he's writing a letter here to Doris. He's saying the Marvels are here to stay, they're not going anywhere. And he's saying it's not them that's going to have to adapt to us. He said the world's going to have to adapt to them. The world's different now, the rules have changed. So then we get Phil, he's with his partner here, they're going to, his partner Casey, and they're going to infiltrate this Nazi stronghold. And he says, but look what's coming. And we see some flames. We see a little foot here. And then we get another great double splash page of the original Golden Age Marvel heroes all attacking this Nazi base, including Namor and the Human Torch. We got both Human Torches here. The two androids, Captain America, Bucky. Pretty awesome stuff. And then we get there's Kodak film here because, Phil's a cameraman. And the next issue is called Monsters, where we get the introduction of the mutants and the X-Men. So I love this back page too. It's got the same thing going on the cover where you can pull it open. We see the face of Human Torch here. So awesome book. Highly recommend this. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, I'll definitely be covering issues 2, 3, and 4 of this coming up soon. So stay tuned for that. And please subscribe if you like videos like this. And I'll see you guys on the next one.